Hi-ho, Dr. Jimmy here again. Today is still Tuesday the 17th of January, and I am still wearing the American Horror Story t-shirt, and this is still the history of Halloween Horror Nights 24, which was held at Universal Studios Florida in the year 2014. In my previous video, I had gotten through almost all of the haunted houses, ending with the 7th penultimate house, the 3rd of the originals that year, Dollhouse of the Damned. So there's just one house left to talk about. But first, I realize now that once again, I forgot the cocktails. Shouldn't forget the cocktails, and I know that cocktail fans, especially some of those with poor judgment, are waiting to hear about the cocktails for some of the haunted houses I talked about earlier today. So first of all, the one for The Walking Dead, end of the line. For The Walking Dead end of the line, peach schnapps, Southern Comfort, Sprite, and a cherry, inspired from the episode Still and dedicated to Beth and Daryl. Indeed, as the scene from the two scenes from that episode were in the house, the country club and the and the moonshine shack. And of course I'm limited to what they had at Finnegan's, but peach schnapps was featured in the episode, and I added Southern Comfort, of course, for Daryl Dixon, and added to that some Sprite, but the cherry is for Beth because she was a virgin. Yes. And it was served up in a Universal Studios plastic to-go cup, as you can see. It's actually quite good, really. It was one of the better ones that year, and much better than the previous Walking Dead cocktails. So, the next house I had talked about already was Giggles and Gore Incorporated. So, what sort of funny cocktail could I make for a clowny house? Well, I came up with a cotton candy martini, which was made with whipped cream, vanilla, and raspberry flavored vodka, because they have those flavored vodkas. So basically it was a martini served straight up, mixing the whipped cream, vanilla, and raspberry vodkas, also served with a cherry like a great big red clown nose. And it looks like sort of like a martini, except it's got a cherry in it rather than an olive, and it tastes sweet like candy, like cotton candy. Perfect for the clowns. Now, what about Roanoke Cannibal Colony? Well, what would have been most appropriate was something made with beef broth, but they didn't have that. Like there's some kind of a Bloody Mary made with that, but that's not what I had. What I picked then was a combination of wild turkey, rum, and cranberry juice. Basically, sort of a Thanksgiving feel, although it wasn't Pilgrims, but still, I thought that'd be appropriate. And I added not a drink for vegans, best served with meat. And so here was the beverage. As you can see, I think it's garnished with a slice of orange, and as you can see here, it's a festive drink, fit for any sort of Thanksgiving celebration where the main course is meat. Yes, so that was the Roanoke. And then Dollhouse of the Damned. What did we come up for that one? Well, for Dollhouse of the Damned, since it was originally about a little girl, although not quite what came out, I came up with a deflowered Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple is a little girl drink. That's a virgin drink. Well, I deflowered the Shirley Temple, yes. So it had ginger ale and grenadine, and a cherry like a Shirley Temple, but then a double shot of gin. Yes, that's the drink here. So it's like a Shirley Temple that's been spiked, because it's sweetness, innocence, turned to hell. That's perfect for Dollhouse of the Damned. All right, so those were those cocktails. There's one cocktail left, and that's the one for the final house, and I'll tell you about it, if I remember, after we go through the house. So the last house for Halloween Horror Nights 24, which was located in Sprung Tent number 2, was my favorite house of the year. And what was the name of that house? Dun, 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 dun. Yes. Da-da-da! Halloween. And here's my little friend, Funko Pop Michael Myers, to tell us about it. Go ahead. Well, go on. He is telling us. He's telling us with his mind, because, you know, Mike isn't the most loquacious person you ever meet. He's a bit taciturn, doesn't say very much. Yes. He has the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. Yes. Anyway, put him down for a moment. Yes, we have Halloween, based on the original John Carpenter movie from 1978, with a little shout out to some later versions, and they did a brilliant job with this. It was my favorite house of that year. It was wonderfully done. They truly recreated Halloween for you, and when you walked up, they built the Myers house as the facade, and there it was in all its glory, the Myers house. And if you walked up, and there's a jack-o'-lantern on the front porch, and as you're walking up from the queue area, and it was good to spend a little bit of time in the queue area because you could see all the effects. As you're listening to the wonderful music of Halloween, you know, John Carpenter's score, dun, 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 dun. You look up and you see the silhouette of Michael Myers. You can see the silhouette of Judith Myers, a teenage girl, and she's getting ready for a date, and she's dressing, putting her bra on, you know, that sort of thing. And then you see a silhouette of a little boy wearing a clown mask, holding a big-ass butcher knife, and he goes up and there's, oh my God, and then it all goes black, and then as it continues, you start to see the house begins to deteriorate, right? And they use projection to create the illusion that this house is falling apart. The shutters are now worn and falling off, and bits and pieces, and the house turns from the pristine new house you first saw through projections, becomes the creepy old derelict Myers house that we see all those years later when Michael comes home, right? And so it becomes the derelict old mansion that nobody has lived in, not mansion, but house. No one's lived in all these years. And then as it gets more and more run down and falling apart, the windows smash, and glass flies everywhere. It's projections, of course. And then there's this big black empty space, and suddenly there's Michael's face glaring at you, a huge mask, and the words Halloween, like the logo. And then it all goes back and starts over again. Really neat projection show on the facade going in. So when you go into the house, you're in the Myers house on the day little Michael killed his sister Judith. In fact, you see her body lying on the stairs, and someone has written the word Samhain in blood on the wall. Now, that wasn't in the first movie, but we do see that word written up in the director's cut. No, actually, it was a television cut they made years later, and they've added it back in. But in the original version, you didn't see the name. But that, of course, is the Celtic word for Halloween. And it's spelled as if it was the name Sam Hain. It's not pronounced Sam Hain. People always say that, but in Gaelic it's pronounced Samhain. The M is sort of silent, Samhain. So that was the name of the thing. And then there's a mirror, and you see Michael in the mirror as a clown boy with a knife, but then all of a sudden he turns into grown-up shape Michael Myers with the mask, and then he comes out and comes at you, stab, stab, stab. Oh God. And you find out that you're not safe wherever you go. And so you go through the movie. You find yourself in the bedroom of the Myers house after the murder has happened. You find the character that's played by P.J. Souls, I think her name is Nancy, getting strangled with a phone cord. Originally those were scare actors, and Michael was there with the white sheet and the glasses, and they replaced it with just static figures sometime through the course of the event. I don't know why. But in the next room there's a sheet, there's the body lying on the bed. It's Judith Myers, of course, or actually it's not Judith, it's another victim, but her tombstone is over the bed. It says beloved Judith Myers with the jack-o'-lantern, and coming up from behind you is Michael with the white sheet again. Rather creepy. You go in the kitchen. In the kitchen, he's got the guy up on the wall and impales him with the butcher knife, and does the really clever head tilt before he comes after you, of course. So you've got that as well. So you recreate all the best scenes. You go outside. And you go through some going into a different house, of course, and you go through some fences, and of course Michael will come out from behind some laundry with the knife, and you're also surprised by a couple of trick-or-treaters. Where did they come from? One of them has a witch mask, one has a pumpkin mask from behind the laundry, and they must have come over from Halloween 3. Who knew that they were nearby? Trick-or-treat. And so after that, and you go into, there are also rooms, and I don't remember exact order of it, but there's at least a couple of rooms that you go in, and it's filled with Michael Myers, and it's all black and strobe light, and there's like dozens of Michaels with knives, and you don't know which ones are scare actors and which ones are mannequins. It's an old gag, but it does work, and I saw a lot of guests who just could hardly bring themselves to walk through there because they were so terrified when they went in that room. But you also have the garage, and you go into the garage, and there's some like 70s music playing on the radio. I love that. And this is where one of the characters was killed in her car, and you have the car there, and she's looking out the window at you like that, and then suddenly Michael comes up from behind her and kills her while she's screaming for help and pounding on the thing, and the horn goes off. Then you come into the living room, and this is where, of course, Laurie Strode is now babysitting, and it's a lovely living room. This would no longer be the Myers house. I think this would be the Doyle house, because she's keeping or whichever. I think it was a Lindsay. Lindsay was the girl who she was babysitting. Then they went over to visit Tommy Doyle. So I'm not sure whose house it is, but it's one of the kids' houses, and she's babysitting, right? You never see the kids in this. There's no. All the teenage characters are there. You've got the, I think Paul is the guy who gets killed, and Nancy and the other girl. They're there. They all get killed, and of course Laurie doesn't get killed. But there's no Kyle Richards in the house. I guess to have the child who grew up to be one of the real housewives of Beverly Hills was too freaking scary. Especially when you realize that little girl is Paris Hilton's aunt. It's true. Kyle Richards is Paris Hilton's aunt. Anyway, so she's not in the house. And of course, they don't want kids in it, I guess. Except for the trick-or-treaters. Maybe those were the trick-or-treaters were. No, I don't think so. But you go into... Another thing they could have added, I wish they had, is that rhyme about black witches and pumpkins and black cats from the beginning. That would have been nifty. They didn't use it, though. But they had the music throughout the house, the Halloween music. You go into the living room, and Laurie's watching telly, sitting on the sofa. I think she may have some popcorn. And what's really cool is if you, different times you go through, you can catch what's on telly. Sometimes it's scenes from the great Howard Hawks film, The Thing from Another World. Actually, it says it's directed by Christian Nyby, but everybody knows that Howard Hawks really directed it and just put Nyby's name on for some reason. Howard Hawks was really behind it. And that's the film that inspired John Carpenter's The Thing. And of course, that was part of a horror movie marathon that was watched on telly in the movie. So you actually see the title of The Thing coming up and scenes from The Thing if you go through at certain times. But sometimes, if you're lucky and you went into that scene, it was the telly reached a television commercial. And what commercial was it? It was, you know, the Silver Shamrock commercial from Halloween 3 with the little heads. 9 more days of Halloween, Halloween, Silver Shamrock. You know, that with the glowing pumpkin flashing and all of that. Yes, kids, get your Silver Shamrock masks. Yes. So there are references to Halloween 3 Season of the Witch in the house, which really delighted me. Of course, Michael comes out from behind the curtains and attacks Laurie with a butcher knife, and she screams and runs out. And so he then comes after you with a butcher knife. There's another wonderful thing in this room that tickled me no end. I mentioned Marvel Comics in previous videos. Did I hear a meow? Is that a cat wanting to go outside again? Bob, you're an inside cat. You stay inside. Silly cat. Last thing you need is fleas right now. Anyway, as I was saying, there's a Marvel comic book in the room, and it's kind of not necessarily in mint condition. In fact, it's in pretty torn up condition. It kind of can hurt you in the heart if you're a geek to see a comic book and such has been torn up. But it's an old issue of Howard the Duck from 1978, when Howard the Duck still had a comic book. And it's like, oh my God, it's a Howard the Duck comic book. Oh my God. So that was a really clever thing to have in there. I liked that. All right. So after that, I think that's when you have the scene with all the Michael Myers knives and strobe lights. And then, of course, there's Laurie's being chased by Michael through the house. And so you go through a gauntlet, a very, with Michael coming out of the walls. And then, of course, even better, you're inside the closet. Remember the closet with all the louvers where Laurie grabbed a wire hanger and poked him in the eye with it. You're actually in the closet, and there's all these clothes, and of course Myers will come out from between the clothes at you, and you don't know which way you have to go. It's really gets claustrophobic and scary. But if you're very observant, you might notice one of the garments hanging here is a sweater with green and red stripes, a shout out to a different slasher from a different film. So isn't that interesting? So then after you come out of the closet, oh my, after you come out of the closet, you find yourself in a bedroom. And that's the bedroom at the end of the movie. And of course, Michael is there with his butcher knife to get you. And then here comes Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance. And he takes his gun and shoots. And Michael staggers back and falls through the window, and you're out of the house. Of course, you standing right between Michael and Doctor, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get shot. But that's the climactic scene, and the house is done. So it's pretty much all the neat highlights of the movie, all the kills. They leave out a few bits. You don't have the bits in the sanitarium or whatever, but still, you get the home movie. There was another thing in one of the houses, when you go through living rooms and houses, there was a great big painting on one wall, a giant cat head. I said, oh my God, they've got a cat in the house. Got a great big picture of a cat. And I like that too very much. So Halloween was my favorite house that year. It was very well done. Even though it's an intellectual property, sometimes the best houses are IPs. I've pointed out to people who complain about the IPs. So those are all 8 haunted houses for Halloween Horror Nights 24. So let's get on to scare zones. And what? Uh-oh, Michael's telling me, don't forget the damn cocktail, he'll stab me in the nose. Oh dear. All right, so you must remember the cocktail for Halloween. So, what did I come up with for Halloween? Let's go back to, because my iPhone reset, go to, that's not what I wanted. I want to go to my albums, my album for 24 cocktails. Here it is. For John Carpenter's Halloween, this treat with a few hidden tricks. It says, a hot beverage with apple juice, fireball, kraken, and rum chata. So I made sort of a hot toddy, basically. Apple juice, because that's something that's Halloweeny, you know, bobbing for apples. And also adding the fireball to give it a bit of cinnamon, and black kraken rum, and the rum chata. It was delicious. Oh, this is like one of the best ones. So it was served, as you can see, in a hot cup, and it looks like you know, a cafe mocha or something. But it's just a wonderful, wonderful Halloween apple witch's brew hot toddy. That is just one of the best ones. So I recommend that. Again, I was limited in my cocktails in 2014 to ingredients at Finnegan's, but I did my best to try to get some way to capture the idea or the theme of each house into a beverage form. Right, so that's all the cocktails for 2014, because we're done with the houses, and I didn't do scare zone cocktails in 2014. Now, so we are now going to proceed to the scare zones. There were only 4 scare zones that year, and shockingly, there was no separate chainsaw drill team. Now that isn't the first time they didn't have a separate chainsaw drill team. In previous years, if there was a highly chainsaw-dominated scare zone, then they decided they didn't need a chainsaw drill team, although sometimes they had one anyway. That year, one of the scare zones did have a lot of chainsaws, although it wasn't really about chainsaws. There were a lot of chainsaws in it, and I suppose they decided they didn't need a CDT that year. I've been racking my memory if I remember any chainsaw drill team that year, and I can't seem to, nor have I been able to find any pictures, so I'm pretty sure there was no chainsaw drill team that year. If I'm wrong, please correct me, but I've been searching my memories and going back and looking over things, and nope, don't think so. But there were 4 scare zones, and what's interesting is this year, 2 of the scare zones were IPs. These scare zones got announced early, like the IP houses. So really, there were not 5 IPs and 3 original houses. They actually had 7 IPs that year, because it was From Dusk Till Dawn, Alien vs. Predator, Dracula and Toad, Halloween, and The Walking Dead, but 2 more IPs were used for scare zones. So, and 2 of the scare zones were not IPs. Now, the first scare zone is the one that is located on Hollywood, not Hollywood, but the Plaza of the Stars, or Production Central. That path that goes up through the middle of, when we go straight on from the main gate going towards New York, right? So you go down the street, and on one side will be Despicable Me, and on the other side is Shrek. And right in that area, in a little space, they created this incredibly exquisite and atmospheric scare zone called Masquerade Unstitched. Masquerade spelled funny, capital M-A-S-K, as in mask, and then arrayed after that, and Unstitched. And the backstory is this is some sort of dance of the damned, some sort of mass ball of insane people, and essentially they have cut their own faces and own flesh to make their masks, and some of them had like all raw. They had cut masks out of it, and so around their eyes was no mask. It was just the underneath. They cut the skin off instead, and some of them had other masks over, you know, bits and pieces. It was rather horrific. And some were ornate masks, so there were those that were wearing regular masks, but it was a frightening, creepy, and cutting and blood, but fancy dress with some of the most spectacular ball gowns and tuxedos and ornamentation, all under this magnificent chandelier, which had bits and pieces of bodies in it as well, and these enormous candles, these huge towering candles all around that were, you saw human faces and arms and limbs caught in the wax, so the tallow must have been human fat as well. So there was candles made out of human corpses, and the dancers would dance the waltz of the dead, the danse macabre, if you will, and the beautiful ball gowns with blood everywhere, and many of them had pointy knives or candelabra that had pointy ends on it, and some had candlelight, some didn't. Just crazy dancing and turning and attacking the guests as they passed by. Very atmospheric, very bizarre, very creepy. The next scare zone was much more detailed. It encompassed all of New York, including Delancey Street and allegedly Sting Alley, although you rarely saw anyone in there. This was another IP. It was the Purge Anarchy, based on the first two films of the Purge franchise. And so you had some of the characters from the first movie, like the elegant lad in his school jacket with the clear plastic mask that was called the Polite Stranger. And so he's there announcing things occasionally, and other purgers like the girls, the schoolgirls that were with him, but also some of the more anarchic Purge Anarchy characters, like the guy with the mask that says God on it, except I guess they thought that might offend people, so they replaced it with the mask that said dog. I guess the fellow was dyslexic or something. He wrote dog instead of God, got it backwards. And there were, you know, all sorts of purgers from both films. You know, the guy with the tattoo going down on his neck, and blonde hair and big muscular arms, and lots of them with chainsaws. So you had sort of a chainsaw drill team there, because there were an awful lot of purgers with chainsaws chasing you about. But you also had those with axes and golf clubs and any sort of weapon, and guns, bang, 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 running through the streets. There was mass carnage. There was the school bus, which used to be the Cary, Ohio school bus, now said, you know, America, New Founding Fathers, and there was stuff all over New York Street to make it the world of the Purge. They did the windows of Macy's with television sets broadcasting scenes of purging and things about, you know, Purge annual sale, how much is marked off on prices, and wreaths of the little blue flowers on all the buildings in New York. And some of them were boarded up for the Purge because they wanted to keep people from breaking in during the Purge. The sirens would go off, all the announcements. For the next 12 hours, all crime is legal, including murder. All of that. You have fire going off. It was pretty amazing. Sirens, all done up with the blue flowers especially. A great big stage setup where they had a show, where the elegant lady from the Purge Anarchy in her red dress, and they would take victims and sort of auction them off for you to kill, who's to be killed next. In addition to all of that, there were motorcycles running around as well as chainsaws, and that made it exciting to have motorcycles chasing people. And the milk truck. Remember the milk truck that dropped off zombies in a zombie bomb? Well, they brought that back, and it would stop, and they would run out from inside the truck, the purgers, and with their masks, and they'd grab a victim out of the crowd and drag them into the truck. Now, they had scare actors in plain clothes mixing in with the crowds of people, and so you didn't realize it, and these guys would come and grab someone next to you and drag her kicking and screaming into the truck and start killing her or close the doors and drive off. And what the fuck, man? The Purge is real. I mean, so it was rather amazingly done. So it was a very awesome scare zone with lots of little showpieces and sets, and the characters were completely insane and running around attacking everyone. So they did an excellent job on the Purge Anarchy. And Bob is telling me it's time to finish for the day. So this was part 6. I shall resume with part 7 sometime later in the week maybe, and that will cover the 2 remaining scare zones and maybe go into shows. So it may take me less time to get through Horror Nights 24. There's 2 more scare zones to talk about. One that's original, the Bayou of Blood, and the other one will be another intellectual property, which was based on the reality television competition show Face Off. But the first time they did a reality television competition show at Horror Nights since Fear Factor. Oh, Fear Factor was an awful house. Would they do better in 2014? We shall see.